Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. We are wrapping up our third season here in mid-October. We're going all the way down to Paducah, Kentucky, and talk with Nagui Matta. And Nagui's going to talk to us a little bit about his trip around the Great Loop. He's gotten his way through the Great Lakes, down around through Chicago, and now he's headed down the south part of the Ohio River. Well, we're going to talk to him about life on a boat, how the huge hurricane changed some plans going all the way to Florida, and just a little bit about his adventure. We've had 3 installments so far. We're going to keep track of him, and I think you'll see some really cool pictures along the way. I don't think you'll realize just how terrific the river is until you talk to Nagui, and he's going to do that in a couple of seconds. We put our boat away yesterday in the storms and the snow here in mid-October, and for another sailing season, we're finished. Next week, we'll bring you the last of this year's Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We brought you some pretty interesting characters, from Doug DeVos to Harry Hutchinson to Paul Kayard, and a variety of folks in between. We are looking at changing our format for next year, and not sure if we're going to be on YouTube. We were talking about the possibility of going to PBS. We're going to kind of revamp the program because I think sailing needs a good, solid show talking about racing and cruising the Great Lakes, and I hope that you guys agree. So anyway, we'll get on with Nagui and we'll have a conversation with him. We'll be back in a couple seconds. Welcome back to here we go. 5, 4. Welcome back to 5.
Always
4.
start.
Welcome back to the internet. All right. This is serious. 1, 2. Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host, and we are with Nagui Matta. And Nagui, we are fortunate enough to have a conversation with you. What a great background. You're in Paducah, Kentucky. Am I correct?
You're right, Paducah.
So you are down on the Ohio River?
I am right at the point where Ohio and the Tennessee meet.
Okay, so you've been traveling south on the Mississippi.
I have.
And then you had to go uphill, so to speak, upstream. And it's been windy there. It's been windy here. So just from a boating standpoint only, just talk about the last maybe 150 miles and what it's been like.
Well, the last 150 miles were all on the rivers. And for the most part, the rivers have been relatively decent weather. We'd get the rain once in a while, but no big deal. Then a couple of days ago, it started blowing real hard, northwest winds. And I guess in Michigan right now, they're talking about like that same wind pattern is wreaking up a big storm on Lake Michigan. But down here yesterday, I think the night before yesterday, 2 nights ago, it was, we had winds of 25 miles an hour and gusting to 40, at least according to the app. And then yesterday, I don't think about 20 miles was the top I saw. So it's been pretty breezy, and the wind like that it's kicks up the river pretty well. Believe it or not, there was whitecaps on Ohio yesterday.
Well, you got to figure there's places in the Mississippi. I got to assume they got to be a mile and a half wide, right?
Oh yeah, at least, yeah.
So I mean, that's the size of a good solid lake around here.
And there's places where on the Illinois and the Mississippi where you get these lakes. They call them lakes literally because it just widens up so much that it acts like a big lake. So
downwind, you said you were probably 20%. You were 120% efficient because of the current.
It is on the Mississippi and it's been great, and the Illinois.
Now going up river, is it 50%? Is it like being under the Ambassador Bridge?
Oh yeah, I was like when I turned from the Mississippi to the Ohio, I was going a good 12 mile an hour with the current on the Mississippi, and it was easy. I wasn't running a lot of RPMs to get that, but as soon as I made that turn, it slowed down to about 7 miles an hour with the same RPM. So it's a big differential going down.
You've got an REI padded coat on, so I'm assuming it's got to be cold where you are right now.
It is. It was 30 degrees this morning, 32 degrees. It was freezing. It's a little bit warmer now, but it's about, I'd say 45, 50.
Our conversations before you left were about air conditioning to make sure you don't sweat. Well, part of that same discussion would be flip the coin. And now you've got to worry about how do you heat your cabin?
Well, I have a couple of options. If I have electric power, like if I'm in a marina, I have a little electric heater that I use. I can also use the unit, the AC unit I have. It has a heating element in it, but I have to have power. I anchored out a lot on the river so far, and that becomes a problem. But I do have a little propane heater. I don't like to leave it on overnight inside the cabin, but just kind of like turn it on in the evening and warm up the cabin, and then turn it on first thing in the morning, and that works.
You must have a great sleeping bag.
I do. Very well insulated sleeping bag and a blanket on top of that. So yeah, it's cozy.
We watch a bunch of YouTube videos where the guys, it's Friday afternoon. Let's go up in the snow and camp when it's 14 below zero, and they make themselves a makeshift shelter and crawl into their sleeping bags. That's not what I would want to do, but you can survive. Those sleeping bags are pretty warm.
Yeah, exactly.
Being on the hook now a little bit more, are you getting more proficient at anchoring?
I am. Ideally, every place I anchored so far, we found little kind of like creeks off of the main river, and you just pull up there and it's very well protected. The last anchoring night I went to, I was on, we couldn't find one of those, and I was supposed to get to Paducah 2 nights ago, and then we got delays at the lock, and by the time we cleared the lock, there was like 5 or 6 other boats with me. By the time we cleared the lock, it was obvious that to get to Paducah is going to be dark, and I don't want to travel the river in the dark with these big barges and tows. So we literally anchored at a known anchorage, but it was right on the river. It was kind of like a little spot outside the main channel, and that's when the wind picked up. And one of the boats I was with, actually the anchor dragged and they couldn't reset it. So for like a couple of hours in the dark, they had to kind of like circle around the area. They didn't want to go in the river in the dark either. That night, my anchor alarm went off for the first time. So I have this little app that kind of tracks where you are with GPS, and if it goes outside a known radius, it just starts blaring. Sure enough, the wind shifted and picked up, and the boat spun 180 degrees, and the anchor held, but it was kind of interesting night. It was a little bit got up several times.
Anxiety play a part of that in the back of your brain when you're trying to sleep?
Try is the operative word here.
Right.
it's right. I mean, when you get woken out of sleep by an anchor alarm, you start imagining things and you start thinking about things. It's dark outside, you can't really see very well. It was obvious that the boat was pointing in the other direction, 180 degrees. But the anchor, I have a really good anchor. It's a Rockna, and it held really well. Just a lot of rocking, a lot of motion. That's all.
Do you have a second anchor?
I do.
Have you seen close to where you might need a 2-anchor night?
In fact, I've used a second anchor, but as a stern anchor. One night we were in a one of those little diversion canal, they call it, and it's a little canal. You pull up, but it's kind of narrow, and it's plenty deep enough. But because of how narrow it is, you want to keep the stern from swinging.
Right.
So you deploy a second anchor and off the stern of the boat to keep it from swinging back and forth.
I think of a news thing. It was CBS, one of the major news networks, where in Fort Myers, the 8-inch concrete dock had broken away and floated about 4 blocks into town. And with it was 2 40 or 50 foot cruisers
Wow.
that were still tied to the cement anchor, and they drifted in because of obviously 150-mile-an-hour winds. But I'm thinking, if I'm the company that makes those dock lines, I got to get some of that film or some of that video and use it as a commercial, because if it'll snap an 8-inch piece of concrete and pull a 20-ton boat and the lines don't break, that's pretty good. That's pretty good dock lines.
Absolutely, absolutely. And trust me, I got plenty of dock lines. I got spare dock lines, and yeah, pretty big
All right.
dock lines as well.
So we've obviously had a hurricane in Florida. You're headed towards that loop. So sometime, I'm guessing in the next 2 to 3 months, you're going to find yourself on the Florida coast, in the Gulf. Has it changed plans? Have you had to renegotiate in your head what you're going to try and do, or where are you with that?
Not yet. It's been kind of I did slow down a little bit and spending more times at these stops, but there's a couple of options. One is you can get to Florida on time as planned and try to bypass Fort Myers and just make it a long day and go past that, because below that it wasn't too bad. I mean, above that it wasn't too bad. So you can bypass the hardly hit areas. Another option is to just tread water here for an extra month or so and just see how things shake out. I have some friends in Florida, and they keep me updated, and I got a couple of reports. Tarpon Springs, it was relatively unscathed. It wasn't that bad from what I hear. So one option is to go in there, or maybe another option is to spend time at on the Panhandle quite a bit, and we just hang out there for a couple of months. And once things get better and marina availability, one of the challenges, Greg, is that it's not only the transients, it's the people who still have boats there that survived, who took them away. Now they got to come back and find marinas and dockage. So we're competing, us transients competing with the locals for dock space. And so what I have in my advantage is that it's a relatively small boat, and dock space is probably easier to find than a big 50-footer. So right. That's a plus. But sure. I'm giving myself another month or so to make a decision. What's going to happen?
Now, you want to be back in Michigan if this loop's completed by what? Beginning part of next summer?
Probably midsummer. Okay. The Erie Canal doesn't really open till May, so I can't get there too early to the Erie Canal. So I got to pace myself to make that opening, and then from the Erie Canal head back to Michigan. And so I'm guessing midsummer, maybe late summer.
What do you figure you're going to find yourself around the Keys? Probably January, February?
Probably December, January, I'd say. If I'm going to go to the Keys, it's going to be probably around that time. Do
you worry about medical emergencies for by yourself out in the lake, out in the water, out in the ocean? Not the lake, but the river?
Oh, sure. It's a challenge. There's at least 2 loopers that I ran into that had medical emergencies, and one of them was a sailboat. He was from Montreal, and he and his wife are doing the loop, and she became sick. She had to basically fly home and get treated in the hospital. Yeah. And so here he was with a sailboat in the middle of the Illinois River area, and he didn't have his mast with him. His mast was already in Mobile, so he shipped his mast. So he had to make a decision. And so he and a buddy of his are taking the boat, fast tracking it to Mobile, and then we're just going to haul it out and probably get it shipped home.
Huh. I worry about a man of your advancing years. Make sure that you're healthy, and that's a joke, but nevertheless.
Yeah, advanced in years. Okay, we're not that far apart, buddy.
My question: you mentioned you've been traveling with people, almost like a wagon train. I'll use the old, West version of things. Are there more people out that do this loop and do these kinds of things than you might expect?
This year, especially, yes, because last year Canada was still closed because of COVID, and so last year's crop of loopers was really down, and so a lot of people that were anxious to get going are kind of pushed it off to this year, plus the regular allotment of loopers. So yeah, it's really there's a lot of boats this year, and I suspect that's going to be more people completing the loop this year than last year.
How much time you've gone about what 1,400 miles, give or take?
Yeah, exactly close.
Okay, so 1,400 miles. How much of that time have you been by yourself, and how much have you been with some other group, or some one or two boats, or a bunch of them?
I think very little time and being solo boat. In Michigan, especially on the east coast of Michigan, because most loopers this year are going through Canada, and so there were very few loopers going up Lake Huron. So that was mostly day trips by myself. But once I rounded Mackinac Island and came down the west coast of Michigan, every time, just about every day, there's at least 2 or 3 boats that are going the same direction, sometimes more.
Is there something, if I were to walk on a dock, is there something that gives them away?
Yeah, everybody flies the AGLCA, Burgee. AGLCA is America's Great Loop Cruising Association.
Okay.
And it's an organization where you subscribe to. You have to pay dues, and you get access to a lot of information about the loop, a lot of other loopers, and they put on seminars, they put on training material, route information. It's a very, very helpful thing. And typically, almost 99% of the loopers fly that Burgee. And so, yeah, it's very easy to tell who the loopers are in the marina that you're at.
I would think the commonality that you would have with another looper would be pretty terrific to be able to meet them and see them, because they're sharing a dream that 1% of the people decide they're going to go do, and everybody else sits on a chair, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just mind-like, personalities and hearts, and all of a sudden you've got somebody of common interest and common spirit. I think that would be kind of cool.
It is. There's all kinds of there's all kinds of differences. There's people doing solo. Most of them are couples, but there's people with families doing the loop. I just met a couple yesterday who had daughters somewhere around, I don't know, 10, 12 years old, something like that. And they were homeschooling them on the boat during the loop. There were other sailboats, there's power boats, there's little boats, there's 50-footers. I tend to be on one of the smaller size boats that I've seen on the loop. I haven't seen anything smaller than mine so far. I know there are, but it's actually an advantage. But yeah, the differences are one thing, but you do share a commonality of the challenge and experience.
Is there anybody you've met trying to first name basis with at this point?
Oh yeah, tons of people. There's a fellow looper who's doing it solo also. He's on a sailboat. He's on an old, and he has a small boat. He has a 26-foot sailboat. And so yeah, I hung around with him in Michigan, and we still talk just about every other day. He's a little bit further south than me now, but we still chat, and he gives me advice where to stop, where to anchor, avoid this spot, so on and so forth.
I mentioned this because this happened, I think, 4 years ago now. Grace Pytel, who's a member of Crescent, as you and I are, yeah. Grace had taken the loop, and they were down at Mobile. And come to find out, my nephew on Sailing Solianis, which is one of the very successful YouTube shows. In fact, they were just at the Annapolis Boat Show as part of that. Ask Expedition Evans and all of the other groups that had their tables out. So Solianis, they were actually next to each other. And I found it was really kind of cool. Mr. Pytel had mentioned to me that he had run into somebody that knew us all the way down there. And what would be the chances of somebody, docking next to somebody that's 2,000 miles away? I mean, that's coincidence at its best, right?
True. I did meet people from a big boat from what do you call it, Mackinac Marina up in Clinton River area there. So yeah, you tend to connect with some people.
Okay, so connect. If you go down the west coast of Michigan, a little less on the east coast of Michigan, when you go to Saugatuck or South Haven or Holland or any of those places, St. Joe's, yeah, those are towns that are built on the lake to deal with tourism and boaters. They're built that way. That's true because if you drive through those towns in the winter, a lot of the downtowns are closed, t-shirt shops and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Get onto the river, and so you go through St. Louis and you go through these other places. Is the waterfront the same in terms of retail Meaning that are they looking for business from people on the rivers, or is it just more of not an inconvenience, but just something they have to deal with because it's there? And compare what you know to be tourist kind of stops in East and West Michigan as to compare to what it might be going down the river.
Well, the towns are much different, and the frequency of towns is much different, and so like Paducah, I just finished a 200-mile section where there was no marinas. Okay, so for the past 4 nights or so, I was either anchored out or tied to a barge on it's called a marina, but it's literally a couple of barges on the river, and there's very little in the town. So, so yeah, the landscape is a lot different in terms of the towns, but the towns are still very amazing. They're this little town called Kinswick, Missouri. Amazing little town. You drive by, and Beardstown, Illinois, same thing. You drive by and you think they're kind of like, this town that time forgot, but they're thriving. They have tourists. In Kinswick, they had tourist buses coming in, because again, it was kind of like little antique shops, and very small town, but great restaurants. Paducah is one of the bigger towns so far on the river. And again, they have a riverboat docked near the marina today, because again, tourists come through on the riverboat and explore the town.
Home of the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers.
Is that so?
Yes. Yes. One of the guys that coaches at Western Kentucky was actually part of my staff way back at Orchard Lake St. Mary's. He's now a college assistant coach. So he's trying to make this. And he loves it down there. He thinks it's just a great place. And look at the trees behind you. They're beautiful.
It is. It's a lovely town. It's a great restaurants and great barbershop. I just got a haircut this morning.
Do they charge you the same price as they do a full head, man? Because I've said this 100 times. You would never charge the same price for cutting 1 acre of grass as 2 acres of grass, but you got to pay the same as the guy who's got the 2 acres. So
you got
those are the breaks. We both suffer from the same process, so I get that. So is it fair to me to say then that it's not exactly the same kind of tourist communities and the boating communities that down the river?
It is fair. When I started the river section, I kind of had the attitude that, all right, I'm just gonna get through this as fast as I can, because it's nothing like Western Michigan, and that's not happening. The great little towns, great people, good food. It's different. It has a completely different feel than Western Michigan, but it's a great experience, and these folks are very very nice.
Talk a little bit about St. Louis, because seeing the arch has got to be kind of cool from the water.
It is. The thing about St. Louis, there's no marinas in the downtown area.
Yeah, I find that extraordinary. Why?
It's very industrial. They're talking about building a marina, but as you can imagine, building a marina on the river, millions of dollars, and it's as the locals are just arguing about it and debating it right now. But so the closest stops is Alton, and Grafton is not too far. And I stopped and spent a few days in Grafton. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of boaters from St. Louis that keep their boats in Alton and Grafton, and they just drive up to get to their boats and to enjoy their boats. So there's no marina. So to me, St. Louis was just a drive-by, but it was a great drive-by, and there was 4 of us driving that day or passing through, and so we stopped and took pictures of each other in front of the arch, and that was a pretty cool experience.
I'm going to ask an obviously dumb question, but I honestly don't know, and I'm curious. What's the percentage of power boats and sailboats that you found on the river marinas? I'm assuming it's all power boats.
No, there's a few sailboats.
Where would you sail?
Good question. It's not the kind of sailing we enjoy in Lake St. Clair and the Great Lakes, but it's definitely some sailboats. I was shocked in Grafton. There was at least 4 or 5 boats, and one of them was talking about eventually doing the loop on a sailboat. So
I asked the question because I'm assuming, and I don't know, is the depth of the Mississippi River inconsistent? because it's mud bottom, it's moving, I'm sure there's sandbars. So from a sailboat perspective, unless you had a shoal draft, it would be a nightmare.
Especially this year. This year, the rivers are so low that there's even the Coast Guard coming on the radio saying, "Hey, barges, be careful in this stretch of the river. Proceed with caution. Nothing under." But typically, it's not draft is not an issue. But a lot of the creeks and dry right now. It's just. In fact, there's we passed by a monument called Tower Rock, just a little bit south of St. Louis, I believe. And Tower Rock is normally a big rock sticking out of the water that you can't walk up to it. You just need to take a rowboat or whatever to get there. Well, it's completely dry right now, and there was hundreds of people walking on the shore right up to Tower Rock, and it was just a beautiful day, and people were enjoying being able to do something they haven't been able to do in years. Yeah.
So now you're on the Ohio River.
I am.
That ends up where?
I'm gonna take a turn onto the Tennessee River tomorrow morning, which is right, literally within. I can see it from where I'm parked at the boat. Where the boat's parked.
And that goes where?
That's going to end up in an area called Kentucky Lake. Kentucky Lake is supposed to be a beautiful area for the Tennessee River, and it's a huge park, not kind of like state park. I'm not sure if it's state park or a national park, but it's huge. It's a lot of wildlife. It's supposed to be beautiful scenery, lots of little bays and inlets and creeks you can anchor out in. It's supposed to be very, very scenic. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, so how long before you hit the Mobile?
I'm guessing November, late November, maybe. I'm going to be there.
Okay. This is the last time we talked. Any anecdotes, any stories that you find particularly interesting?
Little anecdotes or stories.
Something funny happened to you, or there was something hit you funny? Interesting?
Well, interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff. One is the anchorages are really amazing and interesting. There's some challenges. We had on the Illinois River, we had an interesting situation happen where it was about 6 boats waiting to be locked through, and the lock master asked us to wait because he has to have commercial traffic go through. So we're all anchored off the side of the channel, and the dog either jumped or fell into the water, and his owner went after him. And the dog made it back to the boat okay. The owner struggled and couldn't do it. And so we rescued him. Okay, but it was a little bit of a interesting story. So he was grateful. Honestly, Greg, his head was going underwater, and we thought he was gone, but it worked out. And he just finished. In fact, he just posted something on Facebook that he just finished the loop within a week or two after that. So
good reason to wear a life jacket, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was a little interesting, memorable.
All right. Well, this is show, I think, 89 or 90. We're finishing up the season here in the next week, and then we're going to be off until January. So we'll pick you back up in January. And looking at the picture behind me, I keep thinking of the windshield wiper. And there are 2 things that I've learned in the last year. I don't ever want to have to sail again with a helmet, as I did in Chicago on the fast boats, because I don't think sailing, you should have to wear a helmet. And I'm not sure it's boating when you have a windshield wiper. That should be left for your car. So I'm learning something as I'm doing the show a little bit. So that's been kind of fun too. But this is a great adventure for you, and it's kind of cool. And we're gonna keep tabs on it, and just kind of we'll pick you back up. Hopefully, I think about the middle of January is when we're going to start up our 4th season. So
that'd be great. And if any of your viewers have any questions about the loop or need more information, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All 6 of our regular viewers, you get a chance to see all that you do, so that's kind of fun.
Okay, it sounds like a plan.
We'll make some announcements as we get towards the 90th show, which I think will be next week. This will be, I think, the 89th show, so we'll tie that together. And Hey, be safe and certainly wear your life jacket.
I appreciate it. Good talking to you again, and let's keep in touch.
If the world works right, you won't have to use the windshield wiper much more anymore. So that's
Or
good.
I won't have to wear a winter coat anymore.
Or a helmet. Thanks, Nagui.
Talk to you later. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
man. See you. I just want to thank Nagui for taking some time and talk to us about the Great Loop and his adventure, single-handed adventure around the Great Lakes, down the Mississippi and the Ohio rivers, eventually to the Gulf Coast. And we'll keep track of him as we get through the season. This is our second to last show for the season, and we will probably be taking off the rest of October, November, December. Be back sometime in February, early February. And we hope you have a great, certainly Christmas and holiday season. But like I said, we've got one more show to do, and we'll produce that in the next week. So we appreciate everybody spending some time with us. And for all the guys in back, we'll see you next time.